Hi, welcome to our channel Programming of Mind, where we accelerate your knowledge with concise, from high-value book summaries. Let's begin the dip. Understanding when to push through and when to quit success is often seen as a straightforward path. Take the right steps, follow the process, and eventually, you will reach your destination. However, the reality of achieving success is far more complex. And one of the most critical factors in determining whether you will succeed or fail is knowing when to quit and when to push through. Imagine you are on a journey to become a top-level athlete. You've trained for months, put in the hours, and sacrificed a lot of time and energy. But after a certain point, you hit a wall. Your progress slows down, and it becomes harder and harder to see the results you're hoping for. This is the moment when many people quit. The dip, the period of struggle, frustration, and stagnation, can be overwhelming. But this is also the point at which success is determined. Take the story of Tim, an entrepreneur who started a small online business selling handmade leather goods. When Tim first launched his website, he was excited. His designs were unique, and his passion was evident. Initially, he made a few sales, and things seemed to be moving in the right direction. But soon after, sales dropped off. Tim found himself in a prolonged dip. For months, his revenue stayed flat, and he started doubting whether his business could survive. During this time, Tim had two choices. He could quit, acknowledging that the business wasn't going to work, or he could push through, continuing to refine his products, marketing strategy, and customer experience. Tim chose to push through the dip. He invested in better materials for his products, hired a marketing consultant to improve his website, and started engaging more directly with his customers. Over time, his sales began to pick up again, and his brand gained a loyal following. What Tim experienced was the classic dip that many entrepreneurs face, a moment when progress seems to stall, and it's easy to believe that the struggle is a sign of failure. However, Tim's story shows that success often lies just beyond the dip, in the area where most people would give up. By choosing to push through when things were difficult, he ultimately succeeded. Tim's business grew, and he now has a well-established brand that competes with some of the biggest names in the industry. The concept of the dip is not just relevant to business or entrepreneurship. It applies to almost every aspect of life. Whether you're trying to lose weight, learn a new language, or develop a new skill, you will inevitably encounter moments of frustration, difficulty, and stagnation. This is the dip, and how you respond to it can determine whether you will ultimately succeed or give up. One of the key principles behind the dip is understanding that not all struggles are the same. The dip is not just about facing temporary setbacks or challenges. It's about hitting a period of prolonged difficulty that tests your commitment and resolve. It's the moment when things become tough and the initial excitement of starting something new fades away. But here's the thing, the dip is not always a bad thing. In fact, the dip is a natural and even necessary part of success. It serves as a filtering mechanism, weeding out those who are not truly committed or willing to put in the effort required to succeed. The dip forces you to confront your limitations, reassess your goals, and decide whether your effort is worth the payoff. Take the example of Sophie, who started learning to play the guitar at the age of 30. At first, Sophie made rapid progress, picking up basic chords and strumming patterns quickly. But as she moved to more advanced techniques, she encountered the dip. Her fingers hurt, and she struggled to keep up with the more complex music. She started questioning whether she was wasting her time. At this point, Sophie had a decision to make. She could quit and accept that guitar wasn't for her, or she could push through the struggle, knowing that it was a part of the learning process. Sophie chose to persist, continuing to practice every day, working on the skills she found difficult. After months of consistent effort, Sophie reached the other side of the dip. She could now play songs she once thought were impossible, and she gained a sense of satisfaction from overcoming the challenge. Sophie's experience illustrates an important point about the dip. It's not just a barrier to success, it's also a test. The dip challenges your dedication, and if you can push through, you not only gain the skills you were after, but also develop a deeper level of resilience and grit. The struggle that comes with the dip isn't just about getting better at what you're trying to achieve. It's about becoming stronger and more capable of facing future challenges. In addition to the dip, there are moments in life when you encounter what's called a dead end. A dead end occurs when you realize that you've invested too much time and effort into something that simply isn't going to work. This is the moment when quitting can actually be the wisest decision you can make. But recognizing the difference between a dip and a dead end is key to making the right choice. The dead end is not an obstacle that you can push through. It's a sign that you need to pivot or abandon the path altogether. For example, consider David, who spent years trying to become a professional photographer. He loved the craft, but after working as an assistant and attending numerous photography workshops, David began to realize that the industry wasn't as lucrative as he had hoped. He struggled to get consistent work, and his earnings were barely enough to cover his expenses. At some point, David had to face the reality that his dream of being a professional photographer wasn't coming to fruition, and it was time to pivot. Instead of continuing down a path that wasn't working, David decided to shift his focus. He moved into photography-related marketing and began working with photographers and agencies to promote their work. David's decision to pivot rather than continue down a dead end illustrates the importance of recognizing when it's time to quit. Quitting doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes it means acknowledging that you've reached a point where the investment isn't paying off and making the decision to redirect your energy to something else that may offer more potential. The key takeaway from understanding the dip is that success is not linear. There will be times when things are smooth and progress comes easily, but there will also be times when you hit a wall. The dip is a critical part of the process, and how you navigate it can determine whether you ultimately achieve your goals. When faced with the dip, you must ask yourself, am I willing to push through, or is this a dead end that requires me to reassess my direction? Thank you for listening, and please like the video and subscribe for more great upcoming content that will put you in top 1% people in the world.